remote uplands of Central Africa, this monument marks a beginning. With these drops of water, the River Nile begins its 4,000-mile journey northward to the Mediterranean, crossing half a continent and 7,000 years of recorded human history. On its banks, civilization built early marvels. Kingdoms rose and fell, gods appeared and vanished. Their destinies inseparably joined to the river. None were masters of it. More than ever dependent on the life stream of the Nile, man still tries to impose his rule. To learn the impact of his growing intrusion, Cousteau team members study the changes now occurring in the Earth's longest river. Transported by the expedition's specially fitted PBY Catalina, the team members will follow the entire course of the Nile in their 10-month journey, encounter the endlessly various life still sustained by the river. Some of it little altered since prehistoric times. Always, in its passage across a changing landscape and the shifting patterns of life upon it, the river went its own way. Man's early devices had little effect upon it. Now, increasingly, man's machines have the power to alter the Nile forever. Not only are ancient cultures and animal sanctuaries threatened by extinction, but men are learning that technological triumphs sometimes create problems greater than the ones they seek to solve. On the Nile, man has preserved some of his noblest monuments. Today, it is the river itself that may be most in need of his protection. Travelers upon and beneath the seas, Philippe and Jacques Cousteau this time take to the air. Their first destination, the mountain headwaters of the Nile. As the Catalina climbs above the waters off Corsica, the Cousteaus leave behind the Calypso in which they have been charting the Mediterranean's increasing pollution. Now they will study the greatest of its river systems, the Nile, which once emptied as much as 84 billion cubic meters of water into the inland sea each year. Flying southward, the Cousteau's path will cross the waterless Sahara to the Ruwenzori Range, once called the Mountains of the Moon. Part of Africa's great central rift, it forms a vast escarpment, sometimes rising 16,000 feet into the equatorial sky, close to the Catalina's operational ceiling. Here in midair hangs the true source of the Nile, the moisture-laden clouds moving eastward from the Atlantic that make the Ruwenzori Mountains one of the wettest regions on Earth, and for the Catalina, threading its way among the peaks, one of the most hazardous. Trapped by the snow-capped summits of the Great Barrier, cooled by the upper altitudes, the clouds release their rain on the mountain slopes, running off through wild upland streams into the great catch basins of Lake Albert and Lake Victoria, major reservoir from which the upper White Nile flows. Descending through the broken overcast, the travelers at last glimpse the swift current of the upper Nile. Here, still nearly as unspoiled as it was at its discovery more than a century ago. As Captain Cousteau traces their course upstream through Uganda, Philippe brings the Catalina low over the clustered Sessi Islands in the northern end of Lake Victoria, only a few miles from the airport of Entebbe. It is here that the Cousteaus first sight a strange phenomenon. Clusters of wraith-like columns rising from the surface of the lake.
Okay, let's go down lower.
Suspecting that they may be water spouts or even dust twisters carried out over the lake, Philippe approaches cautiously. Even flying at an altitude of 300 feet, the swaying columns tower to double that height above the plain.
Gros nuage d'oiseaux au-dessus. Ils sont en train de se former en colonne pour, comme d'habitude. Répète. J'ai pas entendu. Ils sont en train de se former en colonne. Oui.
It is only when the Catalina is brought to the edge of one of the whirling clouds that the Cousteaus at last realize the character of the mysterious colonnades.
On commence à plus voir grand-chose.
They are lake flies, veritable storms of insect life rising from the water.
Il y a peut-être intérêt à s'éloigner un petit peu et à revenir parce que les oiseaux se méfient.
Now a challenge appears. Like a great aerial armada, a phalanx of birds sweeps in to attack. Abruptly, the men aboard the Catalina are witnesses to an onslaught of predators by which nature balances accounts between one species and another.
Essaie de t'approcher un peu des oiseaux. Ah, ils sont tous au-dessus, hein, les oiseaux. Close.
Eager to follow the course of this one-sided action, Philippe brings the Catalina in to a landing. Ahead of them, the dark clouds of insects are moving westward across the islands. Swept by the wind away from their natural breeding bed in the lake itself, the numbers of flies are so vast that no attrition halts their survival.